stressful things I've ever done. And I was getting super frustrated. And thankfully, Scott was like, let's take a break. Let's let's everybody breathe. And so I got it on the second shot, but that first one was tough.
Yeah.
It came out great.
I'll officially welcome everyone. Hello, I'm Scott Freck. I'm the Executive Director of the Eugene Symphony Association. Delighted to have you with us. We can't see you. Hopefully you can see us. I'll just make a quick round of introductions and then kick us off with the first couple of questions. If you do have questions for any of our guests, please put them in the chat feature of YouTube, and then I will eventually see them and ask that question, and hopefully you'll get your answer. We'll start by welcoming our music director and conductor, Francesco Lecce-Chong. Hey, Francesco, how are you?
Hey, Scott. Hey, everybody. Great to be here.
And you're in California right now,
I am indeed. Yep.
Great. Good to see you. And a special welcome to our principal timpani, Ian Kerr, who's up in Portland.
That's right. How's it going?
Good. Nice to see you. How are you? And then last but certainly not least, Daniel Cho, who is our conducting fellow and also a graduate student at the University of Oregon. He's here in Eugene, as am I. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
I'm good. I'm fighting the allergies and it's hot, but I'm good.
Yeah, it's a fair point on both fronts, actually. Yeah. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the premiere of our Soundwaves 6 program that we just saw, and the final of our very unusual 2021 season. What a year it's been. Unlike anything else I've been through, and I'm sure that's true for all of you, Daniel and Francesco and Ian. I guess I'd like to start with Francesco and ask you, does anything stand out about this last one? So we've done 6 of these Soundwaves. The first one was repurposed video from April of 2019 that we had just happened to shoot almost by accident. And then the second one was a string quartet in a house of worship. And only in February did we start to get access to the Holt Center and have a string orchestra. And then we've been sort of expanding since then. So this is the 4th one with a significant ensemble. Francesco, for you, what stands out for this one compared to the 3 prior that we had worked on? What did we learn along the way?
I think we've been building in some ways towards this moment. I mean, on a very selfish level, for this program, this is the least amount of conducting I've done on a concert where I was the conductor, probably ever, and probably will be that way remain that way. It was also really fun. I mean, the fact that I got to sit back and watch Ian and the percussionist just, knock our socks off at the cage. And then Daniel, just, lights out with the Chen Yi. I'm getting to enjoy myself. Like, I'm having a great time, even if I'm plunking away in the piano during the Riley. So, it's honestly, one of the great things about this entire series is, my work is the same, but I feel like I'm less front and center. And I really like that because, the way the camera angles are, I'm not front and center except occasionally on camera. But it's like I get equal time with everybody in the orchestra, and there isn't that hierarchy that we see on stage. And I think there's been something kind of beautiful about that almost, no matter what weird dance I'm doing on the podium, you don't get to see it. Like, you're actually getting to see what's important in the music. And I've really kind of enjoyed that, feeling like I'm just kind of, part of the band and we're doing our thing. But this concert in particular really highlighted the leadership and the strengths within the orchestra. And I think that's what was really beautiful. And I know we can talk about the great tech and all the other things that we did in this program that were even better and more extravagant than we've done in the past. But on a musical level, for me, I would say what I loved is just getting see that artistry from so many different parts of the ensemble.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things I loved about this program is just how musically diverse it was. I mean, we heard not literally everything that orchestral music and instrumental music has to offer, but so many different takes on it, with such variation in between the Jotian that opens right into the Riley, which is completely different, couldn't be more different. Lyrical versus the minimalism, into the Chen Yi that Daniel conducted, into the Cage, which is just the 4 ensembles and very few pitches. Most of it is just texture and combination of rhythm, into the most lyrical thing you could possibly imagine, this Vaughan Williams Fantasia. I mean, just incredible variations of texture. And I love how it added up to a whole experience. Ian, I'd love to turn to you now a little bit. Very different approaches. You're on 2 of the works. Talk to us a little bit first about that Riley, the Terry Riley's piece in C. which is a challenge in a very different way than what you were doing probably any other time in your career, where you and principal percussion Tim Cogswell trade off. You're playing the same notes, eighth notes, it's octaves in C, for like 15 minutes. How hard was that, just physically and mentally, to do it for that long, the same thing over and over without losing rhythm, without losing concentration? Talk to us about that.
I mean, it might be the opposite of what you think, because for me, it was not a physical problem, actually.
Really?
Because, like, yeah, no, physically, I could do that forever.
Wrists of steel.
Just because if you're tense, you're not going to make it 2 seconds. So all of like technique when you're learning, even as a kid up until professionals, is all about how much can you relax while doing anything you do as a percussionist, playing the loudest timpani roll to anything at all. So I'm just literally just like jello, trying to be anyway. But it was more the mental thing. It was more of listening to the click and making sure we obviously had to use a click so that we could pipe in our wind players that were doing it at a different time to sync that up. But the hardest thing was just staying focused on the click and making sure I was purely with that, because as a musician in orchestra, you're trained to do anything but that. You take a look at what the conductor's doing, but really you're listening left and right and front and back to what's happening around you, and you have to not do that at all. So that was one of the biggest challenges for me, was to remember to not do that, because usually, you're listening to your fellow musicians and you're reacting and kind of having musical moments with each other moment to moment. But this one, you have to just play with the click track. So it actually was more about that than just physically, if you can believe that.
Yeah.
And actually, it made me think of being happy that I was in marching band, because we did a lot of just playing, as much playing as possible to strengthen your hands and such. So it kind of made me think of that.
Cool. Well, we actually have our first question. I have more follow-ups, but I have our first question from the chat, which is from our good friend Jay, asking if you chose to play the same notes, or could you have moved on to different sections, which is an interesting question about how Terry Riley wrote this piece. And I don't know if Ian, if you want to respond to that, or Francesco, why did you never get to play anything else?
Well, I mean, as you notice, we do a slick little trade-off in between. We get to, I think I started, of course, and start the octave Cs, and that's prescribed in the piece by the composer. It's really, I think, originally on the highest pitches on the piano, the highest Cs on the piano instead of the xylophone. But then if you look in the middle of the piece, Tim and I switch places, and then we go and we play the music just like everybody else. But I don't know if anybody wanted to expand upon that.
Yeah, Francesco, do you want to talk about why Riley has that throughout? What's the point of that constant rhythm?
Yeah, I mean, they can't change the notes. I mean, part of the joke or the title of the piece, it's in C. So it doesn't matter what note you're playing, B flat, F sharp, what everybody else is playing, the C stays steady. I mean, I think, this piece plays so many games with your ears. And I think there are times where the C stops sounding like a C because of the way the various other things are changing underneath it. But so the sort of the point is that you have, again, minimalism, we're not trying to do things because wouldn't that be interesting? It's kind of like, how do you get interest with the absolute minimal amount of material? And so that's kind of where you just have that C, and it's also, strategic in that we need a constant eighth note pattern, because otherwise we wouldn't all be able to do our repetitive patterns in a way that would interlock. So it's essentially, you have to have that rhythm. And why it's the same note, I mean, that's kind of the premise of the piece.
Yeah, right. Yeah, in a way that's it's kind of the anchor that everyone can sort of refer back to as they're doing their thing. A really good question also from the chat. Thank you, Brenda. Ian, if you could explain what you called it, the click, which is the full name is the click track. If you could explain what that was and how we used it for this, how it's used in other purposes, but how we use it specifically for this. And then maybe after that, Francesco, you can talk about how we use that for our wind and brass colleagues who recorded their parts, and I'm not making this up, a month earlier. So Ian, explain what the click track is.
Sure. So a click track is basically a metronome that is going on in your earphones. And we did that for this piece because we needed to coordinate the musicians that were playing the wind parts that were, like you said, recorded a month earlier on stage at the Holt individually with the same exact tempo. I think it was 112 to beats per minute. And that exact denomination was clicking in my ears. And I played to that click. And that's why I was saying it was really hard to focus on only that and totally block out my fellow musicians, because that was what the doctor ordered at that moment, to make sure that the same click that the brass players and woodwinds players were playing to was exactly the same as the one that the entire rest of the orchestra, including myself, were playing to. So, and click tracks get used in other things. The other times I've used them, or had they've been used with orchestras, is like if you're syncing movie music, sometimes things like that. The click track will be used to get the synchronicity between the music and the video absolutely precise in a way that might not be humanly possible. So that's what kind of what a click track is. Yeah,
exactly. It's often used commonly in film scoring, so that every musician is literally on this at the same time, to the extent that, as you said, it might not be humanly possible if they didn't have that. So I'd like to come back to Ian to talk about the John Cage piece in a little bit. But first, I'd like to just congratulate Daniel Cho, our conducting fellow. This was your official public Eugene Symphony debut. As part of your fellowship, you get to conduct every now and again, but only usually in rehearsal. So this was a big night for you. How was it for you? What was your experience like the week of? This is now 2 weeks ago that we recorded this. And what was it like to see it for the first time on video tonight?
I guess the week of the rehearsal, I knew I would be really, really nervous for that. And so just knowing that I would be nervous, I was sort of prepared for it. And when the feeling came, I just sort of tried to distract myself, or I just tried to, focus on other tasks that I had for the recording of the video. And I found that when I actually got up there, everyone was like smiling at me and was really being really encouraging, and it made me feel like I could be myself and I could step out of my shell, and that they wanted to work with me, which is not something that I expected. Usually when orchestras work with young conductors, they've seen every conductor under the sun, so they're a little bit like, who's this kid? What's he gonna do? And I didn't get that sense from them. And so I felt like I could be more myself, and I think that made me conduct even better. So it was, and because of that, they sounded better, and it was just sort of this constant give and take throughout the week. And then the recording finally came, and everyone was just being really supportive and was really excited. So I thought it went really, really well. And I couldn't have asked for a better place to have my big professional debut as a conductor.
Well, Daniel, I must say on behalf of everyone here at the Eugene Symphony, we are very proud of and happy for you with this big step forward in your career. So I have to ask, which was more nervous making, doing it or watching it tonight?
It was definitely watching it, because I've been a musician since I was 4. I joined my first orchestra when I was 10. So doing the whole thing and being backstage and going on stage, I'm very used to that. But having like a video with the Eugene Symphony logo on it and Francesco introducing the thing, and then the crazy awesome Terry Riley, and I knew my piece was coming up after the intermission, and I was sort of having, it was like, I think it was 6-minute intermission, and the entire time I was sitting on my couch just like hoping it was going to be good. So it was definitely, tonight was more nerve-wracking, but it was so great to see the orchestra play this piece so well. It's such a fun piece.
Well, let me let you off the hook. It was good, so you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Thank you.
So Ian, let's come back to you about this John Cage piece, written in 1940, percussion quartet. I don't know how many different instruments up there, and especially prepared piano, which is something that John Cage, I'm not sure if he invented, but he certainly became famous for.
He did invent it, actually, yeah.
He did? Okay, cool. And in the intro that you and Tim did, we showed some close-up shots of the different things in there that you put inside the piano case and how you manipulate the strings of the piano. So talk to us about what all was in there and how you made it sound so different. It sounds like completely different instruments for every different technique.
Right. I think John Cage said about it, he says, I'm only being practical, when someone asked him about why he would put pieces of metal inside a piano. And his original idea was trying to emulate Indonesian gamelan ensembles. Yeah. And that's actually his fascination with Far East, our Eastern music was really the impetus for him coming up with it. And it is his invention. So to some of the things that we put in there, and by the way, he gives a page-and-a-half description of text that's talking about exactly what he wants you to do. So it's not something that's like, you know, of your own, you know, he has very precise, you know, almost like stereo instructions about what to do. So first of all, in the middle C, most of the range of the piano, when you strike, the hammer strikes a pitch, it's actually 3 strings being struck at one time. And so you take a screw and you place it in between 2 of those 3 strings, and it basically creates some really wacky harmonics. And that's the sound you're hearing on that middle C.
Yeah, in like a buzzing kind of rattly sound there.
Well, yeah, it gets a little bit rattly, and it's just a really like twangy kind of it's the wrong sound that a piano should make, but that's what he kind of was going for. And then in the bass, we have just muted tones. And you saw a beautiful thing that I used to mute it was with a sock. It's just the easiest thing. The other thing is you don't want to damage the piano. So it's like, how can we do these things without, you really don't damage the piano by doing it.
Thank you for doing that. They are rather expensive. So I appreciate it.
Of course. And it's a beautiful 9-foot Steinway, and I'm doing these horrible things. And then in about an octave above the middle C, as you hear some of the more kind of really the most melodic sounding thing in the whole piece really is between the A and E flat, he has you placing cardboard over top of the strings. And then that's the most buzzy sound is that. And the one thing he does say though, is he describes the sound he wants and how you do it. But he says, create these sounds in this way by experiment. So you really have to the screw needs to be up this way, and it doesn't sound as cool if it's this far up. And then what really I thought was, maybe if you look back at this video again, is you will see that the cardboard that makes the buzzing sound, it was too buzzy at first. So I had to weigh it down, and then it was not buzzy enough. And then I had to take, and the thing that I found that worked perfectly to have the perfect amount of weight to make the right sound was 2 packs of playing cards. And they were just the perfect weight. And I placed them on top either side. And the other thing you have to deal with is the skeleton of the piano, because they're a little different. Every piano is a little bit different. John Cage knew this, and that's why he's saying, trial by experiment, And so that's what, if you notice, I used 2 decks of cards to just place on the cardboard on either side of the metal frame of the piano itself. And that was just the perfect weight. And so that's why those were there. But that's the idea of the way that we prepared the piano in this exact piece. And every piece that he wrote for prepared piano has a different configuration.
Yeah.
I think the big piece he wrote is called Sonatas and Interludes. And it's mini multi-movement piece for solo prepared piano. And there's, I think, 70, 50, at least 50 different things that have been done to the piano. Whereas there was only I think 4.
Yeah. So and this is something, Ian, that I kind of talked you into while we were in rehearsal. But for that cardboard bit with the 2 decks of cards placed on it, which I love that. But you started off with a piece of junk mail that you got in your mailbox.
That's correct.
And I said,
oil change company or something. Yes, yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. And we liked, in each of these videos, we like to include a little Easter egg, a little inside joke that for people who are paying attention. So the piece of cardboard that I had you use was one of these.
That's right.
It was the postcard announcing the dates of our premieres. So if you look really closely in that premiere and in the introduction, you can see Francesco's face peeking out from the piano. Sorry, Francesco, played a little joke on you there.
Well, I loved it. It was so perfect too, because when you gave it to me, I put it in, and it worked perfectly. It was the right size. I didn't have to cut it or anything. And then also the places that I needed to put the cards literally framed Francesco's face. So it would be a funny thing to go back and watch.
Yeah. So if you want, go back and see the introduction again and slow it down. You can see Francesco. From the chat, we have a lovely comment from Topher saying, wow, that was pretty darn cool. I will see you're pretty darn cool and raise you a very darn cool. And then several comments congratulating Daniel on his debut. So that's fantastic. I want to talk a little bit to Francesco about the Vaughan Williams, which is one of my absolute, top 5 favorite works of music all time, full stop. I just love it. It seems to me like it's an interpretive challenge, how to make, it's so lush and romantic and rich, and how to get the most out of it without going too far and making it too gloppy and too saccharine. What's your thought process on getting the most out of that, out of the string players?
Oh man, Daniel and I could riff on this forever.
I got time.
That's what I love having Daniel around for, is because we can talk about things like this, how do you deal with a piece like this that kind of wants to sit back a little bit, but you lose it. It needs a little bit of an edge to it. And it's a piece that it was interesting. I haven't done it, and I hadn't done it like honestly since college. Once again, a string only piece doesn't show up that often, right? When you're a big orchestra conductor, an orchestra isn't going to give you only the string section. They want to see you conduct the full orchestra. And when you're a music director, you want to use the full orchestra. Like, you want to use your colleagues, you want them to play. So you're not going to purposefully ever, program a string piece, right?
Right.
So
you can play Ravel and Richard Strauss, so why not do that?
Right. Like, I mean, you want everyone to have a chance to play. We're not, I don't know, San Francisco Symphony playing, 50 weeks a year. For our weeks, we really want to have everyone there. Yeah. So all that is to say is I hadn't done this piece since college, and it was crazy to look back on the markings of how I thought I should conduct it, 10 years ago. It was not pretty. But that's where you realize that you grow and you trust yourself, and you trust that the music will speak for itself, that you don't have to overdo anything, that you don't have to bring out more than what's there. And ultimately, that's what was my experience this time around, is that the piece is crafted so brilliantly.
It's perfect.
With the three different timbres of the three sections. It's laid out so clearly that you can actually just kind of let the piece do its thing, and it really does speak. So yeah, the hardest thing is just convincing everyone also to not overdo things and let the piece just kind of go. And then when you get to that final climax, it's just awesome.
It's unbelievable.
You can let it rip.
There's not a thing that I would think about changing in that piece. It is so, the pacing is just beautiful. The sonorities are beautiful. And one of my favorite things is when it shifts to that very dry, almost secco sound. It's supposed to mimic an organ. Every time I hear it, I look around and see where the organ is. It's like, where's the organ? It's so perfect. I'd like to come back to Daniel. And a big night for you with your actual conducting debut, but I'm not sure everyone watching realizes what an important and really pivotal role you've made in making these last 4 videos, because you've been most of the time back in the control room doing a very important job. Maybe you can talk to us about what that has been and what it was like for you.
Sure. Yeah, essentially for the past 4 videos, I've been working as the score reader for the video team. When you're shooting an orchestra, you can't just shoot whatever you feel like whenever you feel like. I mean, I guess you could, but it would make for a really boring orchestral video. Honestly, it's best for the video to be directing your ears in a way, because music can be as much a visual medium as it is an oral medium. Absolutely. So my job was to sit backstage and sort of go through the score and plan out where the camera would be pointing when, so that we would be able to capture the most interesting thing happening at any given moment. And I think this was a really cool opportunity to show things in the orchestra that you really wouldn't be able to see in the hall as an audience member. Not that I'm dissing a live performance. We all want to get back to live performance, but I think in the absence of it, this was a really cool opportunity to show things that we weren't able to before. And so I worked really closely with the Holt Center technical director, Nathan Cox, and we would just like go back and forth. And, I would say, I would like this shot. And then he would tell me, what about this shot here? And I would say, great. And we would just plan out this video. And I just had so much fun doing it. And it finally, all those hours I've spent watching videos on YouTube of orchestras paid off, because I know what a good orchestral video looks like. And so I was able to really contribute that. And I'm really proud of it. I really enjoyed watching all of them. It's such great work.
Yeah. So and I think, as everybody could surmise, that Daniel's role was not just score reader. No. I was just a score reader when I was in college, and they would bring me in the day of the concert with a marked up score, and all I had to do was call out numbers when we got to the spot in the score. That's a score reader. Daniel was like a director, making the decisions on what the shots were. So we are so grateful to you, Daniel. That was what an awesome job this season.
Bravo.
Thank you. And I would like to mention that I was able to contribute everything I could only because Francesco and Scott really put their trust in me, which I really appreciate. And they didn't have to at all, and they had no reason to, but they just did. And I think that because of that, it made me want to work harder and made me want to do better. And I think it shows in the video.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, Daniel, you mentioned where the camera is looking. In reality, for the first three, we had 5 cameras. For this last one, we had 6 cameras. And furthermore, 3 of them are robotically controlled. And then we were able to dial in up to, I think, 10 or 11 preset, focal lengths and what they're looking at per camera. So we had so many options, and figuring out what to do, what to focus on was just really fun to work with you, and congratulations again on that. The last thing I want to mention is that Terry Riley piece that we saw that was the 31 minutes, really ambitious musically, particularly ambitious to record the winds and brass early and then edit them in. And then we added a third element, was we wanted to showcase some of the murals that are here in Eugene, including some of the brand new ones that the city of Eugene commissioned as part of their 20 by 21 project. And to put all of that together, and the really interesting layering of images was all done by our good friend and partner, Jessica Mitchell at Attic Media. Just an absolutely masterful job. So I just want to give some shout out to Jessica for that work. So I guess we'll wrap up a little bit and say thank you again. Any final thoughts, maybe Francesco, about what we think is happening next and what we're looking forward to?
Sure. I mean, I think the Vaughan Williams was kind of the way I wanted to finish, because yes, it's gorgeous. Yes, it's amazing. But man, if there was ever a piece that you want to hear live, that's the piece. It's just, you can't, there's no microphones in the world that can capture the detail going on there. So I thought it was a great, beautiful way to finish the season, but also remind us what we have to look forward to. And that's the kind of optimism that I'm carrying with me now as we move forward, into the summer, and then our planning for next season. And, what we're seeing is, a lot of advanced planning from orchestras around the country. And I think because of the fact that we didn't go dark this season, the fact that we went out there and we did the best that we could this season, we're in a better position to deal with whatever comes up next fall. Because if you hadn't tried this year, you're putting all your eggs in one basket next fall. And now we've got options. We want to get a full audience in the hall and a full orchestra on stage as soon as we can. But us having next season is not relying solely on one thing. And we might have several different approaches to next season, but the main thing is we're going to be here, we're going to be together, we're going to be making music, and that's what matters. That's what's so important. And so thanks to everyone for being a part of our season. I know it's hard. A lot of us are staring at our screens all day, so why the heck would you want to look at your screen to enjoy a concert? But being that, even if all it does is remind us about the art and what it does for us in our lives, just a little reminder, even that's something, that chance to connect with each other, to know and center ourselves on the importance of creativity in our lives. Every little bit that you've joined us for, every little thing you've participated in has made a difference in your life, in our lives, in the life of our community. And so thanks for sticking in there with us and helping us, move forward, because we're going to be back, so strong, having so much fun, making better music than ever before. And so we're really grateful to have you along for the ride.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you so much, Francesco. We are looking forward to announcing our plans soon, probably in the next few weeks. In the meantime, we have announced a few things, including a brass and percussion ensemble. Ian, I think you're playing in that, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, cool. So an ensemble of, I think, 15 or 17 people in various locations around town, starting Sunday, June 13th at the new 5th Street Market expansion, the alley, that big covered space, which is gorgeous. Following that up the next 2 nights with Peterson Barn out in Bethel and Alton Baker Park. And then smaller ensembles, woodwinds, et cetera, including one at Sylvan Ridge Winery at the end of June. So lots of smaller things, hopefully leading up to full orchestra, live audiences, hopefully fairly full houses. We'll see what we're allowed to do, and the magic that really is orchestral music, and having that shared experience together. We can't wait to do it. Daniel Cho, Ian Kerr, Francesco Lecce Chong, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone out there who's watched and has been supporting this orchestra. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much and good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, guys.